and welcome to Connected Life 2015. The weather today actually seems to be in our favor for once. Let's hope it stays that way. My name is Yin. I'm a DPhil student at the Oxford Internet Institute and Balliol College, and I'm also one of the organizers of this conference. So to begin, I'd like to give a bit of background. Connected Life was launched last year by a group of OII students. Their aim was to connect internet researchers within Oxford to ignite multidisciplinary exchange. And this is something that the OII itself is quite well known for. We've got faculty from philosophy to politics, from economics to education. They quickly realized, however, that interest in the conference came from researchers all over the country, as well as all over the world. I am delighted to announce that this year's Connected Life is even more interdisciplinary and international. So, to give you a taste of the international, we've got speakers from 4 different continents and a vast range of cities, including Honolulu, Hong Kong, New Haven, New York City, and Stanford, amongst many others. We are so pleased that you've traveled all the way to Oxford for Connected Life, and we hope you'll be able to stay for a couple of extra days just to catch up on sleep. So, our theme this year is Our Digital Society. It's not just online versus offline anymore. Online is offline, and vice versa. Digital connections are embedded within almost every aspect of everyday life, and will become even more so with the advent of smart and wearable technologies. So, we need to have interdisciplinary conversations to assess the implications of what's going on, and that's politically, economically, socially, in all different realms, and that's why we're here today. So in the online registration form, we asked you to name the 3 words you most associate with the term digital society. And we've made a word cloud here of your responses, obviously weighted by frequency. The most popular seems to be internet, followed by connected, connectivity, information, community. Now, as a linguist, I think it's quite peculiar how most of these are nouns, only a couple of verbs, adjectives, so connected being the prominent one, suggesting a more passive approach as opposed to an active one, perhaps. Food for thought. So, we also asked you for a tweet-length response to the question, how might digital connections and society evolve? Now, to embed these online responses within this offline context, we have we've printed them out and pasted them onto the walls of the rooms used in the conference. They're mostly in the master's lodgings, actually, not here at the moment. So we hope you'll take a good look at the walls throughout the day. Now, for a brief overview of the program, so as you can see on your printout version, it's an absolutely extraordinary, jam-packed schedule. Over 40 presenters overall, and we have 3 major sessions in the day, and each session is composed of 1 symposium and 2 panel sessions. We encourage you to attend at least one of both. So the main difference is the symposiums are meant to be open forums for discussion, so the audience can participate more actively and throughout the actual session itself, not at the end. With the panels, it's more traditional. It'll be the presentations and a Q&A for everyone. So take your pick, but we do encourage you to try both. We also have lunch in Balliol Hall at 12:15, that's just over there, and a lovely set of lightning talks at the very end, back in here. And after that, we'll head over to the OII again, where you entered for the drinks reception and award ceremony. On that note, we're giving 3 awards, 2 for the best oral presentations for symposiums and panels, and 1 for the best lightning talk. So that should be exciting. Now, the Twitter hashtag for the event is OXCL15. I repeat, OXCL15. Please tweet it, retweet it, go crazy. This is a bit funny, but it should be one line. The handle for the conference is Ox Connected Life. That's one word, not two. So, I guess now it's time to begin with our keynote address, but before that, I will give a bit of an introduction. Daniele Quercia is a really special keynote speaker. As you can see, we've got the online version and the offline version embedded in the same context, like our theme suggests, which is perfect, and they look quite similar. Actually, the same shirt is being worn. That was not deliberate, by the way.
It's a light blue shirt.
Well, in the
Italian,
picture. So Daniele is special, not just because he fits our theme perfectly. It's also not because he was named one of Fortune magazine's Data All-Stars last year. And it's also not because he chaired a very prominent global conference on the web and social media, ICWSM, just last week, and coincidentally here in Oxford as well. Now, Daniele was at the very top of our shortlist of keynote speakers back in February. And we intended to reach out to him in February. But he got to us first. That's right. Daniele submitted an abstract to this conference, just like some of you in this room. He wanted to present at Connected Life. So we ended up asking him to be our keynote speaker instead, and it worked out perfectly. I don't think it actually happens very often at conferences that this coincidence occurs, so we're very happy that it actually turned out to be almost a meant-to-be dream come true situation, not to be, well, not to be corny, but to be corny. So why does Daniele fit our theme so well? Well, he's a computer scientist, but he's interested in the relationship between the online and the offline, specifically in the realm of urban informatics. Daniele researches how to get from point A to point B, not via the most direct route, but rather via the most beautiful, the route that makes you the most happy. He's expanding his work now to the realms of sound, smell, and memory, so urban soundscapes, smellscapes, and memoryscapes, if that's a word. And this is all possible through connectivity, the crowdsourcing of multi-sensory data on a very big scale. Daniele was a research scientist at Yahoo Labs, a Horizon senior researcher at the Computer Laboratory over at Cambridge, and a postdoctoral associate at MIT. So, without further ado, it is my great pleasure to introduce Daniele.
Thank you. Thanks for that. Okay, hopefully you're feeling good, right? So today I'm going to talk about, so my area of expertise is urban informatics. You might wonder what it is. The idea is basically trying to apply computer science tools to answer some of the classical questions in urban sociology usually. So who I am, you know who I am. Maybe you thought that I was a female because of the final year. I'm sorry. So the final year comes from the fact that that's an Italian name, so I'm Italian, I come from the south, then I studied in North, in Torino, near France. And what I did my PhD at UCL, my postdoc, PhD in computer science, my postdoc in urban planning and architecture, and then I went to Cambridge, and that's where I started my research between offline and online, the online world. And then I joined Yahoo Labs in sunny Barcelona. So what do I do? So I try to work up and down this pyramid, and the idea here is that I try to answer, let's say, not fundamental questions, but more general questions related to social sciences with data, like some of you in this institute and maybe outside this institute do. But then as a computer scientist and also working for a company, you need to make yourself useful. So you need to figure out how different studies might be applied to build new tools for people, for example. And so we're going to talk about some of the stuff that I did in urban perceptions. So that's the general questions, how people perceive the urban environment, and then how can you actually build new tools on top of what we found out. And for example, the tools that were mentioned from A to B in terms of finding the most pleasant route. And then another example would be psychological maps. I'll tell you what it is. And then we use that in Flickr actually to rank pictures, because most of the pictures are not annotated. So that would be an easy way to actually annotate pictures. So that's been the general theme of my research. I go up and down and hopefully making myself useful to different communities. In general, if you would like to say what I do is that I study the dynamics of online network individuals, right? And network individuals might mean people who communicate on Twitter or on Facebook and Instagram or on Flickr, right? And why do I do that? Well, the goal is to build useful and simple tools for future cities. I use the word future cities, and I'm sorry if so I'm sure I'm not going to get any money grant because smart cities is the keyword to use nowadays. But I'm not sure. Well, let's not get started on smart cities. So, in terms of research methodology, I had the pleasure of supervising some of students, and what I tell them, one thing that they do is they try to be very original. Especially in the first year a PhD program, and then they get better. So, and what I tell them, well, don't be original that much, right? Try to copy others, but try to figure out from whom to copy, right? That's the key here. And trying to rephrase the questions that they dealt with in a different way, and trying to be interesting, right? And they're always surprised, but after a year realize, yeah, you're right, but that takes 1 year. So from whom I copy? I copy from these guys. How many of you know Jane Jacobs, Stanley Milgram, and Kevin Lynch? Okay, so I think a vast majority may be Stanley Milgram. Who knows Stanley Milgram? Yeah, so Stanley Milgram, okay, you know it because he did different experiments, the obedience experiments, I think the 6 degree, if you do networks, you know what it is, every one of us is connected through friends of a friends of friends, 6 degree, right? And he also did some experiments in the urban context, which we will cover today. Then Jane Jacobs, Kevin Lynch, they are the foundational guys for urban science nowadays, right? And we will also see what they did. But the results of this scoping kind of mechanism has been the creation of these new maps where you don't only find from A to B. If you want to walk to B, Google Maps will give you the shortest direction, right? Whereas this tool will give you the short direction, but it is also pleasant, right? And of course, you understand that the research goes into the mapping, no, the routing. What? Oh, no, but the research will focus on which aspect, that is short and is pleasant. The experience, right? The pleasantness, right? So the idea is that with short, I mean, you need to build an algorithm that finds the shortest paths, right? And that's trivial, right, for a computer scientist. But the pleasantness is something difficult, right? So how do you quantify, if it's possible, the pleasantness of a street? Does it exist in terms of average pleasantness of a street? Okay, well, Einstein once said, logic will get you from A to B, imagination will get you everywhere, so we needed a bit of imagination. So where did we start? We started a while back on looking at work at Kevin Lynch. And how many of you know Kevin Lynch? All right, quite a few of you. So usually in computer science conferences, nobody dares to raise their hand. So the idea is that this book, the whole team is trying to understand the relationship between the well-being of residents of a certain neighborhood and the layout of the neighborhood. Why is that related? I know I'm being annoying early in the morning. This guy is asking you questions, but just come up with an answer. Right. So the idea is that the city, the layout of the streets might be related to the way you feel. right? And just to give you two all extreme examples would be, just imagine that you get out and you go to work every day and you have to go through a maze. Situation number two, you have to go to work every day, but you go through medieval streets where you know every single stone. You do that for a month, and situation one, situation two, where are you gonna feel better? Wow, brilliant. You are a proper scientist. So, and the idea is that, so when you create the street layout that is economical of mental effort, which is not a maze, but there is the medieval part of the city, then you feel better, right? And over time, you're gonna gain in terms of well-being. So Kevin Lynch defines visibility as the ease with which a city parts can be recognized and then organized in a coherent pattern, right? Now, how many PhD students are here in the room? Some of you. Oh yeah, quite a few. So the idea is that your supervisor will tell you, oh, brilliant, I found this definition from Kevin Lynch. Why you don't come up with an experiment that can find a proxy for visibility? And please come back next week with an answer. You might be likely to drop from the PhD program, but there is an easy way actually to quantify it if you think about it. Right. And so Kevin Lynch in 1970 wrote the book. In 1972, Stanley Milgram came to the rescue, and he actually devised a really nice experiment. So he wrote this paper, Psychological Map on New York City. And then what is a psychological map? It's a map inside your head, right? At least, right? Let's define it like that. So basically, just imagine Alice. She's gonna have that's San Francisco. She's gonna have a map of San Francisco, and then it's gonna be Bob, and Bob is gonna have a map of San Francisco. So the problem is, if we actually have a way to collate this map together, we actually would know the psychological maps, the collective psychological maps of people. If you were to live in Oxford, all of you, and then I would ask you to draw the map of Oxford, and then I would collect it, and I would have a methodology to actually do an average map, I would know the collective map of Oxford in this room, right? Okay, and why is that important? Because Kevin Lynch said it maybe is related to the well-being of the resident, right? The problem is that it's very difficult. Well, I can ask you to draw the map, but it's very difficult then to do an average of the map, right? Yes, I think so. Stanley Milgram came with this idea, and the idea was, why not, and that's a typical academic idea, why not exploiting my students? So he had undergrads in front of me, and then he showed for 90 minutes different pictures of New York, and he asked them where each picture was taken. Right? So he collected all the answers after 90 minutes. Maybe he came back after a week, after a month, he doesn't specify in the paper. But then he came out with this drawn map of New York, right? And you can see the dark parts are the parts that are the fractional correct answers from the students, right? Which means darker, more correct answers, right, in terms of proportion. And you can see that Manhattan is more recognized than Queens and Brooklyn, and yet there are some parts of Queens and Brooklyn that are recognized. So this is the first evidence, right, to show that well-to-do areas, let's say, are more recognizable, and then that's a proxy for visibility, than less well-to-do areas, right? From 1972 to nowadays, there was no other evidence of that. And why is that important? Because if you think about urban planning, most of the interventions are thought like, we have an iconic tower there, is a rundown area of the city, and then let's put a very iconic tower, so we'll drive new people, we'll expose the area to new people, and the residents will benefit, unless there is gentrification, as it usually happens. But that's actually assumption behind urban plannings nowadays, right? And this idea was never tested before. So from 1972 to nowadays, there is a difference. We have the internet, so connected life, And so what did we do? We built a platform, it's called urbanopticon.org. You go there and you basically repeat midgram experiments, but instead of having your professor for 90 minutes in front of you, how pleasurable that might be, you go online, urbanopticon.org, and you get to show pictures of, say, London, and you have to guess where the picture was taken. Right? Of course, there are all sorts of complications when you do that online for us, but for you, the idea is that it's a fun game to show how, the extent to which you're a true Londoner or a true Oxford.
Oxonian.
Right, that. So in a few months, the difference was that we launched in a few, and we had more than 2,000 players, which is great instead of having your undergrads. And then you can see the most recognizable parts of London. And what are the most recognizable parts of London? I'm going fast because actually I had to cover that 3 minutes ago. So the most recognizable part, of course, the central part, then the east, the west, the north, and the south, right? So that's the order in terms of regions of London. And if you see the cartogram, you can clearly see the difference. Here, the most striking thing is that the central part of London in politically defined ways are actually really small, but then when you expand them in terms of fractional correct answers, the collective maps has only the central part and part of the north, and the south totally disappears. Right, which is actually, I mean, Londoners in the room, that will actually say, right, because they know if there is a difference, there is a divide by the river, north and south, and what's the most more disadvantaged areas. I would like to actually conclude this part of the psychological maps. I know I'm going really fast, but I'm going to show you also new things that I never showed. So I want to do that here. So, of course, one of the difference is that once you have this data, instead of having the undergrad, that you can actually stratify the data in different ways. Stratify means basically you can segment the data as you like, right? So you can take the answer from Londoners, the answer from people in UK but outside London, right outside London, and then people across the world, right? Because also a fraction of the participants were across the world. And then you can identify areas that are more recognizable by people outside London than Londoners themselves, right? So now I'm going to ask you a really difficult question, which is, which I don't remember. So the difficult question is, what is the area that's most recognized, more recognized by people outside London than Londoners themselves? It's no airport, it's no hotel, and Big Ben would be I don't know who said that, would be recognized by Londoners, right, as well. So it should be something that, I'm not sure what is it. Right? Yeah. What? It's hard. It's very hard. I get a lot of creative answers, so, and then I will write a paper on this. No, the answer it's football stadium. So people right outside London are more able to recognize the football stadium Londoners themselves, and that's about direct experience, right? But then there is a more interesting thing. There are areas. You look puzzled.
Yeah, I say friendly. People
Yes.
You
Yes.
should set soccer for the Americans.
Oh. No. She's put.
It's strange that people recognize friendly stadium.
There are tons of bizarre people outside this room. But then there are areas that are more recognized by people outside UK than Londoners themselves, right? And there is a funny point, but also an important point. Just have a guess. That's kind of easy for people who actually do studies. Huh? Yeah, for as much Londoners might dislike that, and then no, they would recognize it as well, right? No, it's no airport, no hotels, no. Look, London Bridge. For me, it's suicide. No. But the Londoners would know, right? Okay. Let's take take that offline. That's the most original answer I got over the years. And what is it? I don't remember. Oh yeah. So it's Blackfriars. And Blackfriars is a building that has been in the Sherlock Holmes series, in different BBC series, from 70 or 16, I don't know, something like that, to the new series of Sherlock Holmes 2013, right? Here, it's funny, but the most important point is that the experience of the city is not only direct. So you can collect as many internet data as you like, right, in terms of movements of people, but also the experience of the city is defined through indirect experiences, through books, through videos, and whatever. So I made my serious point. So recognizability, yeah, of course, people were exposed, blah, 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 right? But then the most important point is to actually redo the experiments that Milgram did and say, okay, there is a relationship between visibility and socioeconomic conditions. We took the census data and we then had enough data to actually see that the relationship there is. So the more visible areas actually enjoy better conditions in terms of housing, living environment, income, employment, and far less so crime. Crime goes in the direction, but correlation are quite low. What does that mean? Means that since we had crime data, we focus a lot on crime in the cities, where there are certain indicators that are more related to visibility than others, right? And the only way to establish that is that you need to have enough data to do that, and to have enough data, you need to be creative and new methodologies to actually do this kind of experiments. So if you want to know more, Psychology of Map 2.0 is the paper to read. Urban Opticon, if you want to have Urban Opticon in your city, just get back to us. Enough a day, we'll set up an Urban Opticon for any city you like. What you get is the data. What we get is the data for different cities, because we would like to do a comparison across different cities, global cities around the world. Because we think that this relationship isn't that clear cut everywhere in the world. All right, so let's see how late I am. I'm quite late, right? Oh, that's brilliant. I'm very late.
You're
so.
okay. You're okay.
Yeah, but you don't know what's coming. 89 slides. 89 slides.
I can see the progress.
I had to do a joke. So one of the criticisms was that, oh, brilliant, Daniel, you're doing this game that's really fun, right? And you did this, you tested the hypothesis was put forward in 1970 and tried a bit in the 72, but you're not looking inside the picture, right? And then I said, oh yeah, that's brilliant, thank you for the feedback. But then I thought, why do I need to look inside the picture, right? Because I can look inside the picture and I can do that automatically because I'm a computer scientist, so I can analyze these kind of pictures. But then I was wondering, why on earth I'm gonna do that, right? And then I met a few people at Harvard, and they said, oh yeah, that there is a good reason to actually do that, because you wanna know what are the visual cues that generally people associate with what they mention is social disorder, right, or social order. Of course, we needed to do another game because we like to do games, and we couldn't actually do a game on social order or disorder. So we took some sort of proxy that might be related and that might be more fun than asking people what is the most order picture between the two, socially ordered picture between the two, right? And we asked them which urban scene makes you happier, or which urban scenes is more quiet, or which urban scenes is more beautiful, right? So we asked this kind of question, 3 questions, and if I would ask you which one is more beautiful between A and B, which one would you say, A or B? Who says A, please? Who says B? Thank you. So based on that assumption, we built this platform that is called urbangems.org. It's still alive, even if we're not working that much on it. But the idea is that thousands of people, after a few months again, they play these games. You get to show them pairs of pictures, and you have to decide which one is more beautiful and then say how many people agree with you and share your score on Twitter. So there are many weird people actually do that. So this is recorded, right? Okay, no. So there are many people, fantastic people who actually do this stuff. And if you have thousands of people doing this pairwise comparison, actually there is a way, this is a way, a nice way of ranking picture by beauty. Here the idea is that beauty is a sort of fuzzy concept, right? So the criticism would be, okay, it's very difficult to quantify, so stop there, right? Whereas what we said is there any way to actually see whether there is consensus, right? And if there is, then that's the only way you can do it, because you had thousands of data points, and then you have to establish the ranking by beauty, right? Did I confuse you? Right. don't let me start with a function of to rank the picture because it's not fun. And we were after what? We were after what we call aesthetic capital. Aesthetic, so you know financial capital, you all in this room know what is social capital, right? The neighborhood might possess certain key social connections all together collectively, but then the neighborhood can also possess some visual cues that generally people associate with beauty, with quiet, with happiness, well-being, right? We were after that. So we processed the pictures, and basically we put, what we did was we extracted visual information from the pictures, and we related with, let's say, the happiness scores or with the beauty score. And then we had red dots where the correlation were statistically significant. So the red dots go on the textures of the image that tend to co-occur in beautiful images, right? Yes? I'm always afraid that when I say these things. So now I'm going to present you the results, but the paper is aesthetic capital. You can see also the technique and the different differences among the results, the things that didn't work as we expected. But what makes Londoners happy? Victorian brick houses, of course. Public gardens. Then what's the worst element? Well, I'll show you already. Cars, right? That's the worst element. But especially fast-moving cars. But the really cool thing here is that you can look at outliers. So you can look at pictures that have cars, but they're still considered beautiful. Okay, cars are beautiful, or they are in the urban scenes that is considered beautiful if they're not cars. So when they are parked on back streets and they're out of the way of pedestrians, that's brilliant. So for the people who come from US, I used to live in US, it's like, yes.
Or a Lamborghini. Nice.
That's an interesting visual cues for social conditions. Yes. But in London, it would be quite confusing because it's a normalizer. So the serious point I was trying to make is that it's very important to place your car park. So if you have lived in US, you know that sometimes you find this car park in the middle, and then you have two buildings. That's the worst thing you could possibly have, but you know. So isolated buildings, of course, as the second worst element. We've been knowing that for a long time. Christopher Alexander said isolated buildings are symptoms of disconnected society, but still we build them because we need affordable housing. But because that's the only way we can do it possibly. But the also interesting point is that you can look at outliers. So when tall buildings are okay, well, of course, they're okay when they are glass offices, maybe for the reason you just mentioned, or maybe because they give London its unique identity, and then landmarks, right? So we use landmarks for orientation, right? So that makes sense. But then, so if you take all the results together, you do really, really quickly, then what do you, so we were after aesthetic capital, right? And we discovered that aesthetic capital actually, it doesn't exist in a way. So aesthetic capital, what it is social capital. So if you order all the negative elements that people dislike, are actually elements that decrease the potential for social interactions of people. Like cars, fast-moving cars, right? Isolated buildings, parking lot in the middle of two buildings. They're all elements that actually stop the potential for social interactions. And so if you were to be an architect in urban planning, you had to retrofit the city for happiness. Actually, you had to think the social relationship first, which for you may be obvious, but if you look at what usually star architects do, perhaps it's not that obvious. So if you're interested in these kind of things, Happy City is the book to read. It's a good summary of all the literature that's been building. Okay, so I have 5 minutes to cover 70 slides more. So now, what happened with this? It happened that basically, imagine these urban scenes that we show in the game. Those are points on the map, right? It's a bit of geo-reference as a Google Street View, right? So what did we do? So I partnered with Luca Rossano, and with them we actually built new maps where you don't only show the shortest path from UCL to Tate Modern, but you actually have the short path that makes people happier, the beautiful path, and the quiet path. here the idea is that max you have 20% more walking time, max, but still you're trying to maximize, let's say, one of the dimensions of happiness, quietness, and beauties. And of course, in some of your minds, there are going to be some things that are not going to work, and I would love to have questions on those aspects. But then if you're interested in that kind of stuff, the shortest path to happiness is the paper. And as was mentioned before, we ran some trials in Boston and London, and people say, oh great, why companies didn't think about it? There is no reason why we are going to show the shortest path, right? And I said, well, you know, a bunch of engineers around the table decided that the shortest path was because that's the textbook. No offense for engineering, I'm an engineer, right? So I can't speak badly about ourselves. But then what they said is that actually smell, sound, and memories were missing, right? Despite showing the happiness, the quietness, they said, yeah, we're going to take that in different trials, but without telling them that we're about quietness, happiness, of course. But they said there are some parts missing, right? And smell is like someone said, okay, every morning I take one road which is next to the coffee shop because I like the smell of the coffee and the croissant. There was someone else who said, like, I like to run and when the church bell goes off, right? And this street is really important because I gave my first kiss here. This is personal. This street is very important because there was the beheading of the queen, right? Or shared memories. So these aspects are quite important, but they're difficult, right? So when my collaborators in the team, I said, look guys, that's our research plan for the next 2 years. Smell, sound, and memories. And then they look at me saying, oh, you're joking, right? And I said, no, we can do it. And then we started with the first item because we are not very creative, so let's start first. Smell. And why smell? So in 2014, and this is the concluding part, since I have like 2 minutes left.
3 minutes.
3 minutes left. Right. Brilliant. So in Science 2014, there was this paper saying that your nose is a big data nose. So it's a big data machine. So in theory, potentially, you can distinguish 1 trillion different kinds of smell. This is actually the new work we presented last week, but that's an interesting part, which surprised me. You don't look very surprised. Are all olfactory researchers here? You knew that already? All right. Okay, cool. I need to talk to you. But the problem is that imagine it's 1 trillion. I mean, 1 trillion, right? 1 trillion. It's huge, your nose. All right. So, but then imagine city officials deals out of this 1 trillion, maybe with 10, maybe with 100, but not 1 trillion. Why? Because they deal with bad odors, right? That's the only thing they deal, right? Because you complain and then they go there and they try to fix. And why is that difficult to actually celebrate the olfactory experience? It's difficult because it's difficult to measure, right? So there are actually some serious people that actually go around in some parts of the US and China for policing. So it's very difficult, right? And if you had to actually have the entire smellscape of the city going around like that, I don't know, you might need a lot of TAs. Then, sorry, I do bad jokes. But then, so how do you solve this problem? And the problem, so we team up with Kate. And Kate basically does her PhD at the Royal College of Art in London, and she does smell walking. So it's basically, she in different parts of the world, she takes people through walks and she asks them to smell rubbish, right? You smell rubbish, and then you say, oh, it smells like oranges. Yeah, because there are a pile of oranges inside. And then basically she takes keywords, and the idea is that she built over 3 years a list of keywords that are smell related. So we say, oh, that's brilliant, we found the way to deal with smell, right? That's the missing bit. And the missing bit was 258 English words related to smell. And what we did is that we matched those words with social media data. So you take pictures, and sometimes you annotate with a sort of tag, right? Plant or tree and something like that. So if in London, out of 1 billion tags, you actually have 1% that is about smell, you're fine to actually profile the entire smellscape of the city. And that's what we did. Of course, we did the most complicated stuff, which we won't go through it. So we build a co-occurrence graph to say these tags co-occur in the same pictures, so violet and rose co-occur in the same, so you can find community structures. You can see there is a cluster of animals, a cluster of nature, a cluster of traffic emission. So basically what we found is the first urban dictionary that contains smell-related words and is organized in categories, right, in a data-driven way. And actually categorization is very similar to the qualitative characterization that was being used so far. Does it work? Are we crazy? Yes, we're crazy, but it works. So this is a correlation, a street-level segment between certain presence of clusters and air pollutant. You can see that the emission cluster is positively related with air pollutant to a 0.47 extent, a minus 33 to the nature cluster, right? So the condition of the streets that have nature emission clusters are totally different. And of course, you can see the nature cluster in a Hyde Park with highlighted, and the traffic emission around the Hyde Park. So where are the big streets? If you know London, you know what I'm talking about, 5 Lane Kensington Road. Where do you find animals? In the zoo. And the more serious point, just to conclude, is that this is work. So in a way, city officials, urban researchers have been kind of victims of this kind of obsession for bad odors because they didn't have a way to actually measure also the positive ones, right? Now we are offering a way for the first time since we are connected to use implicitly what you generate when you take a picture, right? To actually profile the entire smellscape of a city. And that was not possible before us being connected. And also it's got a huge health implication. So if you think about runners, if you run and your blood pressure goes up, your ability to absorb air pollutants is huge. So you're doing more harm than good when you run. So don't run. Or run through streets that minimize the exposure to air pollutants. How do you know that? Because of this work. All right, hopefully I will show you an example of how to use this kind of complex dynamics and these messy data to actually answer some question, active engagement, crowdsourcing, implicit data, passive engagement of people on the internet. And we could do that only because nowadays we have the internet, right? So we can change slightly the methodology. So to the students, PhD students here, so you have a lot of work to do in this area. And with that, I thank you very much for your attention.
Thank you, Daniela, for that fascinating, wide-ranging, and very multidisciplinary speech. I think it really aligns with our theme, don't you agree? The connected life and the different disciplines. So we have about 10 minutes for questions. Hopefully there's loads of those. 10 minutes. The mics in the room. Speak loudly.
Do I take the question or will you take the question? So
you take them. You take them.
So let's start from here and then we go back.
Do people say where they're from when they're doing urban aquafarm stuff?
Yeah, so the idea here in the game is that you get, you show 10 urban scenes from Google Street View at random, and then after the 10 you have to ask, you can answer a survey. In the survey we ask gender, profession, age, where do you live in London, postcode, and other questions that are control factors for the study.
And do you find that there's an overrepresentation of people from the wealthier zip codes, or no? You find, okay.
No. The nice thing is that also the recognizability is connected to where you live, right? But then when you average things out at borough level, then this effect disappears. So the unit of analysis to do this kind of stuff is boroughs. So once you do borough, you just basically randomize the effect of where you live. In terms of, also we did a work, conjecturally related, on Twitter, and we wanted to know if the spread of Twitter actually was related to socioeconomic conditions. And surprisingly, which was totally surprising, we didn't find any, so the seeding doesn't happen apparently on Twitter on more well-to-do areas in London. Whereas one difference we found at the beginning on Twitter was the device they used. Back in the days, well-to-do areas use iPhones, whereas not well-to-do areas use Blackberries. And people who lived in the UK for 5 years, 6 years know why, because of plants, charging plants, home companies. Did I answer?
Yes.
Yes. So what one's the next? Yes, please.
Really cool talk. What about making it a little bit more complex in the aesthetic realm? Did you find any subplots? Like, did you find any sort of communities that have different visual themes of what they find beautiful? So,
Yeah.
skateboard community that
Oh.
it's a messy sort of environment, maybe
Yeah.
more interesting.
Yes. So that's a great question. So one thing, so the serious, because I've been joking a bit during this talk, right? But the serious question of social order disorder is about how is mediated by race. So in US there is a lot of discussion about it. So what is considered order by white people is different from black people. So if we were to abstract in terms of community, in terms of racial background, then we wanted to do that. So we actually have the data because again in this game we ask questions about race and age and other stuff. So and gender. So we started to segment the data by gender. So we have some differences. But I didn't have time to actually do it. So if you guys, any of you is interested, I can give you the data, and you just, it's fine. You can use it because I think that's an important question. How the different factors, especially racial background, are. Then to go into the niche categories, then that might be a bit difficult. So another thing is that this data is biased, of course. Is not biased in terms of age and genders because it does reflect the general population of London, but it's biased in terms of profession. We have many more people interested in urban, in design, these kind of things, right? So it's overrepresented that part. So maybe one thing we can do is also what experts in urban in the urban field consider beautiful and what non-experts consider beautiful, because that's also something that has been studied before, but not at this scale. Then also another serious point, sorry if I'm being blown, but the other serious point is, if you think about this, is a sort of, in a way, an hybrid, a bottom-up approach of architecture. So we actually gave the beautiful images to 3 architects, and we asked them, would you use them to actually inform your design if you were to build something in London? So there were 2 from New York and 1 from Barcelona. And all of them, independently, they said, no, not at all, thank you. But then we interviewed them for an hour, and funny enough, independently, they converged to the same answer, which was, we're not star architects. So to get the next project, we need to do a nice project. So to get money, we actually need to meet the desire of people, and that's one way of informing what a community or a city might like and what the different cultures might like, right? At least for initially informing the design, right? It doesn't take very much, and it might tell you something you don't know if you're not living in that context as an architect. So that's another example of different countries or cultures and how they might like different things. So there was a question on, maybe you, right? And then back to you, yes.
I really enjoyed the presentation. My concern, however, is when public policy and urban planning starts being informed by experiences and subjective well-being. For example, there has been criticism that if we design public policy based on subjective well-being experiences, we might end up having grumpy billionaires over happy-go-lucky slumber.
So can you repeat the last thing? We
People are concerned that we design public policy based on subjective well-being experiences. We might end up having grumpy billionaires over starving happy-go-lucky slumbearers. So the inherent problem on designing urban landscapes or urban planning based on experiences of sound, smell, touch, which are inherently subjective and perhaps not really conform to perhaps paternalistic notion of what needs to be necessarily done. Do you think that is a concern based on your research?
Just to rephrase the question, what's the connection between subjective well-being and billionaires?
Oh, I'm just giving an example. This is a popular phrase that's often used in the literature, which criticizes designing public policy based on subjective well-being experience.
Right. So, but maybe I don't know the whole literature, but then I'm happy to actually speak about it. But if I think about billionaires, they're going to hire a star architect. The star architect is going to be is going to think about forms, Think about Foster. I'm offending a lot of people here. And then he's going to build this iconic building in the middle of the city without having any concern on what people like and what is the potential social interactions for people, right? That's a billionaire approach. Whereas the approach of this work is trying to figure out subjective perceptions of people is actually to go exactly in the opposite direction. To actually take a subjective perception of people and try to say, okay, where consensus emerges within the community. So it's a totally different approach, right? Can you see that or not? Or maybe I didn't understand what you mean by subjective well-being. But then that's bottom up. That's down.
This comes from a slightly paternalistic point of view in urban planning.
Yeah.
It says that often people who need to be held down in different ways, like urban planning, giving public services, perhaps their experiences, everyday experiences, they don't really understand what is the best in public service.
Oh, I see.
Because of subjective experiences of experiencing traffic jams
Of course.
or
Okay.
reading wrong lines. People do not understand what's causing them that annoyance. It comes from a very paternalistic point
Yeah.
of view, and I understand from associated with that. So
Yeah.
the fact that collective and aggregating experiences in this way might be some form of.
Yes, but that's entirely the point, right? So the point is that as a researchers, we need to do this research, see what is people consider beautiful, and then if you read the papers, for example, we actually matched that with the literature in Christopher Alexander. So Christopher Alexander had 200 and more elements that are desirable in the urban environment. So we actually compare which elements we found, and he actually theorized. And then, so his unmediated collection of subjective well-being things might distort things. But once you mediate and you actually try to understand why is that as researcher, then you can possibly inform policy. Also, you need to consider that this thing is like version 0. So nobody has done this before, right? So you can't. So I had people from the UK cabinet coming in Cambridge and say, can we use Twitter to actually understand the happiness of people, blah, blah, right? Because we are cash strapped and we can't invest a lot of money. And I said, no, right? Because that's version 0 of this stuff. Maybe we need to wait 5 years, 10 years to actually understand the different biases and then come up with policy making, right? So we're really far off from policy making. Maybe the last question?
We have time for a very quick micro question.
So who's got, yes,
30 seconds only. Yeah.
Thanks, Daniele.
No worries.
I was wondering whether you can say something more about how you go about problematizing those emotions.
Yeah.
I'm thinking about, as a computer science background, your own work has been done in the politics of emotions, right? So do you see these emotions as some like psychological states or something more like some cultural practices and experiences? Because if you take into account the culture and the dimension of the experience, then probably you would be able to problematize more how into these categories.
Yeah.
Happiness and
So, yeah, I have 5 seconds to answer. So, yeah, that's a long thing. Let's discuss it later. But the idea here is that in some work we capture emotion, which actually is the perception right in the moment. And in other experiments, we actually capture the mediated thing that you prove when you look at an urban scenes, right? So they're, I mean, totally different dimension in the area you just depicted. So it's a complex answer, but yeah, let's chat about this.
Great. Yeah, I think we'll have to wrap up there, I'm afraid. But there's plenty of chances to hunt Daniela down at lunch, at the tea break / visualization fair this afternoon, and of course the drinks reception at the very end. So that's 3 hours total to hunt him down.
All right.
Now, in conclusion, I have 4 important notices. Number 1, lunch, 12:15, Balliol Hall. Be there promptly after the morning session. There's a lovely buffet, meat options, veggie options, a salad bar. If you have allergies, please make it clear to the serving staff. They will not be aware. There are really odd ones like onions or olives and, really particular ones, so they don't know this. You need to tell them if you have allergies. Secondly, if you have either updated your slides or made new slides or didn't email us slides and you're presenting, please be in your room, ideally 10 minutes before the start of the session. I realize for the next session, as we have tea and coffee and snacks outside for you, that might not be very possible, but rest assured there's a second tea break in the afternoon that's much longer. Third thing is bursaries. If you have a travel bursary form, please go to the drinks reception if you can stay around for that. Duncan at the OII will be there to process that for you. Finally, and most importantly, the morning panels. Now, they all happen to be about highly contentious topics, deliberately so. We want to get your blood kind of flowing for the day, not boiling, but certainly flowing. So, if you are keen to be part of the digital rebellion, stay right here in this room. If you would like to discuss class and power online, go across the garden quad. There'll be directions and people helping you with these maroon badges. Look for this. That is the master's dining room. And finally, if you are keen to hear about cultures and conflicts, go to the master's drawing room. I think that's it. So now it's time to get connected. Thank you very much.